Welcome back to Third Alarm. And as I was mentioning before the break, being prepared is not just a Boy Scout motto, but a way of life in the fire service. At times things occur that force us to go to new heights, rise above and beyond what we normally would encounter. And the added emphasis was intentional. What do you say we go on a little field trip? Why don't you join me out in Kennesaw? Today we're at McCullum Airfield here in Kennesaw, Georgia. And joining me today I have Lieutenant Ryan Fleeman, also Captain Jeff Patelis, and Lieutenant Greg Mercier, who is the chief pilot with the Georgia Aviation Division. And I should also mention, Captain, that you are with the Cobb County Police Department. And we're going to be talking about some training today. Ryan, you are with the Technical Rescue Squad for Cobb County Fire Department. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you do above and beyond what the normal firefighter trains for.
Some of the things that we try to prepare for in the technical rescue team are things such as rope rescues from a high-angle environment, maybe like a high-rise building or a water tower. We work with swift water rescue in Chattahoochee in our local area here, Lake Allatoona. Prepare for trench rescues on construction sites with people working underground pipes and things of that nature. Confined space rescues in industrial settings as well.
Okay, now today, of course, we're sitting here with a helicopter in the background, so I want to pass the mic to Captain Patelis, and let me ask you a little bit about the types of rescue that the helicopter is used for during emergency situations.
Well, with our relationship with the Georgia State Patrol, we've developed a training program that allows us to execute rescues from elevated surfaces that maybe the angle or the high angle or rope rescue folks wouldn't be able to get to, off of cell towers, off of cliff edges, in canyons and ravines, off of mountainsides, even in aquatic environments, out of a river, or off a swollen waterway, out of a lake, things like that.
Okay, why don't you tell us a little more specifically what we're going to be observing today, what type of training you guys are going to be doing together?
Essentially what we'll do is we'll suspend a 100-foot rope below the helicopter, and we'll lower that rope to a specific location so that the rescuer can attach themselves with a safety harness. We'll pick them up, actually fly them to a victim's scene, lower them to the victim, allow them to treat the victim for medical issues. Put an additional harness on the victim, and then airlift them without bringing them into the aircraft. Just simply pick them up off the ground, a determined altitude, and then fly them to a place of safety.
Ryan, let me ask you a question. As the guys that are hanging from the hook, tell us a little bit about how you're rigged out and the things that the people are seeing, the kind of harness that you're in. Tell us a little bit about that.
The safety equipment that we wear is a full body harness. It protects us around the waist and the chest, so there's no way that we can actually fall out of the harness. We're using daisy chain straps, which basically are straps with multiple adjustments so that we can adjust ourselves to the patients. And helmets and eye protection, gloves and things like that, just the basics.
Now today we're going to be dealing with an ambulatory patient, somebody who's not hurt, not injured. You're not going to need to use a basket to bring them up, so you're going to use a harness for them. What type of harness do you put on the person you're rescuing?
The harness we're using today is it's called a quick strap. It's basically a harness that goes around their chest, underneath their arms, and it has a small strap that comes down between their legs and then attaches back to the harness. It's a very quick attachment, just used for very quick rescues and moving back and forth.
Captain, I'm going to jump back to you for just a second. I had the privilege of being able to ride in a couple of the halls that you did in there, and as I was listening through the headphones, it's very much like a very choreographed, specific things that you do, and there's job responsibilities across the crew that you do. Take us through from picking up the guy you're going to haul in to do the rescue, through the procedure, what the things you're looking at and what you're talking about.
Okay. It is very choreographed. It is teamwork between the crew chief, who's in the back of the aircraft, and the pilot, who's up front. The crew chief gives specific direction on the altitude of the aircraft, the positioning of the aircraft, both forward and back, left and right. So we will go through a number of safety checks to ensure that everything is ready to go with the equipment. We'll check all the harnesses on the people on the ground, the equipment on the helicopter, the condition of the rope, the hook, and so on. And then I give verbal commands to the front of the aircraft for him to actually maneuver the aircraft where it needs to be. Because if you think about it, a pilot has no visual indication of where he is in relationship to what is directly below. So he's working completely off the commands of the person in the rear of the aircraft.
Lieutenant Mercier, let me ask you a question. As Chief Pilot, tell us a little bit about the conditions that you find yourself in that are different, say, from when you're normally flying the plane, not in a rescue mode. So your conditions are different for you. What are some of the things that you're having to watch out for and hurt you more or are more difficult for you?
Well, we have to be conscious always of the winds and the weather conditions to make sure that we've got safety. It's looked at it from all angles. We make sure we got the visibility we need, the winds coming over the trees, different things like this. So it makes the pilot a little more on his game and be able to do the things he needs to do because of the live load that we have under the aircraft.
Now, you and I talked briefly in the aircraft when we made the final drop, once we were on the ground and everything was just kind of cooled out a little bit. But we discussed your visual towards when you're set up. You're listening to the crew chief, his directions, right, left, down, up. What are you looking at to give you reference point? Because you're, a few hundred feet up in the air. That's got to be something difficult.
Yes, it is a little difficult because we can't see the load under the aircraft. So we have to pick out something on the ground as a visual reference so that we can be able to maintain that altitude and that drift factor. We can see the visual references on the ground to see if we shift in left or right or if we're moving forward or backwards. But we rely on the crew chief in the back to give us those commands to make sure that we're staying exactly where we need to be.
Let me come back to you for a second, Ryan. Tell us a little bit about the perspective you have hanging from the helicopter. What's that like?
Many people may think it to be a little intimidating or scary, but it's actually a very smooth, very fun flight. You can kind of almost think of it as a great experience at Six Flags, just a little bit better.
Okay.
But it actually is a lot smoother than you would imagine. The pilots do a great job of lifting us up and setting us down very smoothly, so to minimize chances of turning ankles and things like that. So it's actually a very enjoyable ride. Now
let's talk about the communication, because you're not hooked up by radio to the helicopter, so everything you're doing is by hand communication. Tell us a little bit the types of communication and how you're signaling to the crew chief what you need or where you're at.
Yeah, that's correct. We don't have a radio communication, so we're using hand signals, basically to continue to let the crew chief know that we're okay and nothing has gone awry, letting them know if we want to go up or down and when we're ready to move forward in our flight. All these things, we try to keep an eye contact with the crew chief as much as possible so that any messages can be relayed in that way. It's very simple, but it's foolproof as well.
Lieutenant Mercier, let me ask you a question. Tell us a little bit about the relationship between the Georgia State Patrol and Cobb County and how this all works out.
Okay, we're very fortunate to have this relationship develop with Cobb County Fire Rescue. It enables us to be able to go out and perform these rescues throughout the state. We've been working on this program now for a couple of years, and we've got a great bunch of guys that come support us on that. They're trained. They do an excellent job along with the Cobb County PD, and it's just a win-win for everybody to have this relationship develop.
Once again, I'd like to thank Lieutenant Mercier for the Georgia State Patrol, Captain Patelis with Cobb County Police, and Lieutenant Fleeman with Cobb Fire for joining us today and talking a little bit about the training that was being done today. And we are here at McCullum Airfield in Kennesaw, Georgia. Now that was some exciting training, and I can't emphasize enough the delicacy and coordinated effort it takes to complete an operation like that. Also, a big tip of the fire helmet to our producer and cameraman Chris for getting us up close and personal during that exercise. Okay, so we've talked about training and we've talked about charity. So what if we mix the two together just a little bit? Confused? I'll try and clear things up a little right after the break.